Direct from Milan, in Italy, you're listening to the ECTRIMS podcast, a scientific sounding board for the MS research community and the official podcast channel of the European Committee for Treatment and Research in Multiple Sclerosis. This October, approximately 8,600 MS researchers and experts from around the world have come together in Milan and online for the 9th joint ECTRIMS-ACTRIMS meeting. The objective? To share, to discuss, and to dive into cutting-edge research on the treatment, pathogenesis, and diagnosis of multiple sclerosis and related disorders. Today, we bring you the key highlights of Day 2 of MS Milan 2023.
Why I say this MS community could actually lead everybody, even on menopause in healthy women. How can we do it? We can do it. You know why? Because we're not scared off by the fact that it's a little bit complicated. With the interferons, this community knows that timing matters. You have to treat early, not late.
The other interest in EBV, apart from its high success in colonizing the human population, is that curiously it's actually associated with a number of diseases.
Now let's review the ongoing trials in MS with BTK inhibitors.
And so there is about 40% of our relapsing patients who experience sustained increase in disability worsening without evolution to SPMS.
So before we get into kind of the details of the data of what we know currently about teleneurology and telerehab, I think it's important to think about why we care and why we think this would be important for integrating into our healthcare delivery models.
ECTRIMS hosts the world's largest international conference on MS research, and this year is no different. I'm Brett Drummond, host of this special episode of the ECTRIMS podcast. I'm on site here in Milan, in Italy, where ECTRIMS has wrapped up Day 2 of its 3-day congress. Today, I'm joined by Clare Walton, Head of Research at the MS Society UK. Clare, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Brett.
So, in your role at MS Society UK, you represent many different sectors of the multiple sclerosis community. Can you tell us what attending a meeting like this means for you and the importance of it?
Yeah, well, on a personal level, this is the first time I've actually attended ECTRIMS in person.
Oh, fantastic.
And so the buzz is fantastic. It's really great. I moved into MS just before the COVID pandemic, so I didn't get to come yet.
Yep.
So I'm delighted to be here. And it's the first time I've met many of my international collaborators in the flesh, which is so good. And so great for kind of discussing ideas and, driving forward progress. So that's really great.
Yep.
On a professional level, as you say, I'm here representing the UK MS Society, and there's lots of aspects to why we come. So I oversee the research funding programme, and I help develop our research strategy. So it's really important that we stay up to date on what's happening globally to make sure that we're creating the right opportunities for our UK researchers to build on the latest innovations and breakthroughs. We also come to kind of learn what's happening to make sure that we can keep people with MS in the UK up to date and provide accessible content to them so they know what's happening in the world of research. And then I guess alongside the kind of core program that ECTRIMS put on, we have lots of meetings with other partners that we work with. In particular, we meet lots of the other MS societies from around the world who also fund research, and we work together to make sure we're not duplicating and that we can think about which areas would really benefit from collaborative investment. So I think a really good example of that is the International Progressive MS Alliance, which is something that we're a co-funder of. And it was actually born out of several meetings taking place alongside ECTRIMS, in several years. And it was created to particularly address the unmet need that we were hearing about from our patients, which was that there was not enough research focusing on progression and progressive MS. And we established that in 2013. And I think if you look around the programme today, it's really fantastic to see how much that's changed and how much researchers all around the world now are focusing on progression. And I think that's a key impact. It shows how valuable it is to bring people together.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, you're in a unique space in which you can sort of transcend both of those in terms of your role, in terms of being able to come here, talk with the researchers, talk with the other organisations, but then directly feed that back to people living with MS in terms of the advocacy and support and research that you do through the MS Society. So Day 2 was obviously a really busy day of presentations, as they all are here at the conference. What were some of the topics that you found particularly interesting today?
Yeah, unfortunately, there were about 5 all at the same time that I really wanted to see
always
this
the way.
morning. But I think that's the value of the hybrid meeting, actually, is that, obviously I could only go to one of those, but I will be able to watch back.
Yep.
So I'll be able to catch up on those later. But the things I did get to today, I started with the burning debate this morning. The topic was, they were discussing the motion that all women with MS should start hormone replacement therapy at menopause unless contraindicated. So that was a great one. And then I went to a really fantastic session after that on risk, so genetic, epigenetic and environmental risk factors, and also an industry-sponsored session on new targets in MS treatments, particularly looking at smouldering MS. So.
Okay, perfect.
Sessions.
Definitely a wide range of topics there, which is, again, a real facet of the conference. Can you share some of the insights from some of those sessions that you went to that I guess you found particularly interesting?
Yeah, sure. I think the debate for me this morning was really important. I mean, as you and I'm sure your listeners know, the study of women's health has historically been neglected across all areas of medicine, and this is true in MS as well, which, despite it having a higher prevalence in MS globally. And menopause is is an area that is medically not been looked at very much, and I think it's an important topic for women living with MS because menopause and the drop in estrogen can worsen MS symptoms, so particularly things like disturbed sleep, fatigue, and cognitive issues. So the debate was really topical, and it was great to see it, be given such a big platform in the auditorium. So Professor Rhonda Voskuil from UCLA was arguing for the motion, and she presented research in aged animals of MS that estriol, not estradiol, estriol treatment can boost remyelination and have a positive impact on synapse loss, suggesting that hormone replacement therapy could have an impact on MS disease pathology as well as obviously on the menopause symptoms. Yep. And then she also, that was obviously animal research, she also talked about a phase 2 study in women with MS, also on hormone replacement therapy, but they were not menopausal women, and that hasn't actually been done yet. But in those women, hormone replacement therapy improved processing speed and was able to show some improvements in brain atrophy. So, positive indications, but I think her take-home message was that, we are really lacking randomized trials of women with MS who are actually going through menopause. And, really without those kind of studies, it's very difficult to make treatment decisions. Yeah, definitely. But the emerging evidence is that early treatment with higher doses of estrogen replacement are best if we want to see improvements in MS symptoms. Yeah. And then arguing against the motion was Melinda Magyari from Denmark. She talked about observational data from the Danish registry showing actually that there was no impact of hormone replacement therapy on disease course, on MS disease course. Okay. And actually, if you look at people on hormone replacement for more than 5 years, they actually had a 20% increase in relapses. Okay. But she really, she caveated again that the quality of the studies, you can overanalyze observational data, and we do really need some prospective trials. Yeah. And of course, she talked about the risks of HRT, the long-term risks that we know about from other areas, not from people with MS, such as increased cardiovascular diseases, some cancers, and also a new study this year possibly indicating an increased risk of dementia. Okay. So her take-home message was kind of, actually, lifestyle changes like diet and exercise can make a difference in menopausal symptoms. Okay. And that, when we're working with people with MS and menopause, we should really be emphasizing the value of those modifications, and that actually HRT therapy should maybe be considered only for really persistent and difficult symptoms, fully explaining kind of the long-term risks and helping the person with MS to make an individual choice. Yeah. Okay, it's really interesting. And I guess one of the nice things about the conference is that we can engage in debate and share conflicting views. And I guess it's one of the topics that we might be looking forward to next year when we're in Copenhagen to see how that research has developed. And actually, for people interested in that topic, we have a previous episode of the ECTRIMS podcast where we did interview Professor Voskuil, and she talked a lot about that research as well, so you can find out more in that episode. I think you also mentioned, so you were in one of the sessions on risk factors. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Yeah, it was great, honestly. There were loads of early career researchers there, which I always love. having such a big podium, I think that's one of the values of ECTRIMS. You give these, these more junior researchers the platform and the chance to answer questions from leading people in the field. So it was great. It was a very vibrant session. I think the reason it's so important for me is we know we've identified over 230 genes linked to MS, but actually that only explains less than half of the heritability that we see in families. So there's a lot to uncover, and I think that the interactions between environment and genetics is going to be a key part of that. So that was a big feature of this session. So a couple of talks. Emmanuelle Warbant, I hope I've not pronounced that wrong. Sorry, Emmanuelle. From the US, she showed data highlighting the differential effect that childhood viral infections can have on pediatric MS risk. So depending on what variant of the DRB1 gene you have, that the child has, different viruses actually act differently. So in one variant of that gene, EBV, Epstein-Barr virus infection, increased risk of MS, but in a different variant, people with a different variant of that gene, Epstein-Barr virus had no difference in MS risk, but actually herpes simplex virus did.
Oh, interesting.
So I think she did highlight that these studies are really difficult to do. You need a large cohort, and that can be tricky when you're looking at childhood MS. Yep. So, I think she kind of emphasized it needs validation, but I think the take-home message there is that there is clearly space for an interaction between our genetics and viral triggers. Yep. And that's obviously something that needs a lot further exploration.
Yeah. And the use of, I think, a pediatric cohort, as you say, can be difficult, but does allow for insights to be more clearly elucidated because of the fact you're getting them very early before there's been necessarily a time for other factors to come in and play.
I don't know how much time we have, but there was another really interesting angle I wanted to talk about from that session. So Marja Jagodic from Sweden, she was talking about DNA methylation. And I'm sure people know, but just for the background, it's a mechanism for how the environment can impact on genetics. So DNA methylation marks are added to DNA, and sometimes irreversibly, and they can impact expression of the genes where the marks are put. So she was looking at smoking, which is a really great risk factor to study in MS, because we know it increases your risk of developing MS. It also increases the severity of disease progression. But also it has a huge and lasting impact on DNA methylation changes. Marks, and in a dose-dependent way as well. So you can look at the marks that are put on DNA, and they can give you an indication of how much someone smoked when they were smoking, and also how long they've given up, if they've given up. So it's kind of quite a great way to quantify someone's smoking behaviour across their life. So I thought
was it something like 5 to 10 years after they quit before the methylation went back to sort of baseline?
Mostly 5 years, but there were a few people that 10 years, and then there was, I think she showed a couple of people where, quitting several decades ago, they still had the marks persisting.
So another reason to quit smoking if you're a person living with MS, which I know has actually been a really big campaign that you've done in the UK as well, because there's been a lot of data come out from some of the UK registers there around that.
Yeah, and so she was looking, I won't go into too much detail, but I think, it's a really interesting area of study, and she was kind of showing that people with MS have more DNA methylation marks after smoking than healthy controls, which might be one reason why smoking has such an impact on people's development of MS. And she also said that there's some preliminary evidence to suggest that DNA methylation changes after smoking can increase the homing behaviour of some immune cells into the brain. So it gives a plausible mechanism for how, smoking and changes in the lungs can actually impact the CNS. So
definitely.
I thought it was really exciting.
And I think she also mentioned that because smoking has such a big impact on this, that there's probably overlap with other environmental triggers, and this may help us sort of work out where to look for those. So that was a really interesting talk. I was sitting in that session as well. Any other presentations that sort of caught your eye that you'd like to talk about?
No, I think
covered a lot. We have covered a lot. Yes, definitely. So I guess getting through day one and day two really big days of presentations. How are you feeling about the progress that's been made in multiple sclerosis research?
Yeah, very positive. I think it's tremendous to see how much progress has been made. And I think you don't always realise what's going on globally until you come to a conference like this. And I think a really great example of seeing the progress is, you've probably covered it, Brett, I'm sure, but earlier this year, there was the discovery of the gene linked to MS severity. So the GWAS on severity as opposed to MS susceptibility. And it identified just one gene reaching significance that seems to be linked to severity. And, it was really big news, but I think I've seen it in so many talks here, so many PhD students looking at it from all different angles, characterizing it in, brain tissue and from all different ways. So I think it just shows how quickly progress can be made and how research will build on a discovery and really run with it. And I think, it's important for people to know. I think for people living with MS, they can often feel like research is really slow and it takes so long to see progress. So knowing that the community can kind of move that quickly on a discovery that actually will potentially then bring it through to new treatments, I think is really, really exciting. Yeah,
definitely. And we haven't yet covered it on the ACTRIMS podcast, but it's a nice lead-in because it is an upcoming episode that we are recording shortly with the lead researchers on that study. So stay tuned for that one. So while there's almost 9,000, just under 9,000 researchers and clinicians at this meeting, there's obviously millions of people around the world living with multiple sclerosis that are eagerly awaiting to hear about the developments being discussed. What would your message be to them?
I guess, what I just said, that, the cumulative research that we're seeing here, it gives me a lot of hope. I hope it will give the MS community hope too. Professor Stephen Hauser gave the opening lecture here, and his title was Pathway for a Cure for MS. And I think, cure is a bold word and it means a lot of things to different people. But I think what he was talking about was the kind of the tremendous progress that we've made in understanding MS over the last 40 years and what is going to be possible in the coming decades. So at the MS Society, our vision is for a world without MS. And I think through research, we're starting to learn about the earliest biological changes that are taking place before MS symptoms begin. And, as we continue to understand these complex early mechanisms and find ways to detect people that are at risk of MS, and then, develop interventions that work on multiple disease mechanisms, I feel like we can see a future where you can bring this research together and we may be able to stop people from developing MS in the first place. So, of course, we have a really long way to go and that's the future goal. But for me, listening to where we are in research, and I feel like it's a possible future.
And it's exciting that we can now see that as being a possible future, because I don't think it would have been too long ago that we wouldn't have thought that was within the scope of reality. So it's nice to be at this point now. Look, thank you, Claire, for your time today and for joining us for this podcast.
That's great. Thank you for having me.
And thank you to everyone for listening. Please join us tomorrow as we continue with this special ACTRIMS 2023 series, highlighting all the essential research elements of the day. Once again, I'm Brett Drummond, host of this podcast episode and co-founder of MS Translate. The ACTRIMS podcast is produced and hosted in collaboration with two key partners, MS Translate, an independent resource centre that aims to simplify the complex wealth of information about MS for the greater MS community, and the MS Journal, a peer-reviewed international journal that focuses on MS, neuromyelitis optica, and other related autoimmune diseases of the central nervous system. This special MS Milan 2023 episode is sponsored by UCB. The ACTRIMS podcast series is supported by an educational grant from Novartis, Roche, and Alexion AstraZeneca Rare Diseases. Educational grant providers and sponsors have no input on the podcast series content. You can subscribe to the ACTRIMS podcast on all your favourite podcast channels, including Apple and Spotify. Visit the official ACTRIMS 2023 website to learn more about the ACTRIMS Congress and join the conversations on X, formerly Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube.